Harry didn't feel broke. That was the problem. Rent was paid, groceries were fine, and his paycheck arrived like clockwork. But one quiet number kept stalking him at night. His savings never stayed. It appeared, then vanished. He thought stability was a feeling. It wasn't. It was a threshold, and he was closer than he realized. Harry was 31, living in a decent one-bedroom, driving a 12-year-old Honda that still started on cold mornings. He made $78,000 a year, which after taxes and health insurance landed around $4,450 a month. His rent was $1,650. Utilities averaged $180. Car insurance was $110. Gas was $160. Groceries, $420. A phone plan, $70. Streaming and subscriptions, $55. Student loans, $360. Credit card minimums, $90, because there was always something that didn't fit neatly into a budget. On paper, he had room. In reality, every extra dollar already had a job. Birthdays, dentist visits, a friend's wedding, a weekend trip that felt necessary because life felt heavy. He had $6,200 in a savings account, but it never stopped feeling temporary. His biggest fear wasn't poverty. It was unpredictability. The kind that turns normal weeks into emergencies. He didn't say any of this out loud. He just kept moving. And that's where the story begins. Because here's the twist. Nothing changes until one small idea becomes a private obsession. Month 1 began with something almost insulting in its simplicity. Harry picked up The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel after seeing it recommended in a quiet corner of the internet. He read it on a Tuesday night with the sound down low, as if the book might accuse him. One line stuck to him like static. Wealth is what you don't see. Not the car, not the watch, not the vacation. The gap. The distance between income and lifestyle. The next morning he did something tiny. Not a dramatic overhaul. He opened a separate high-yield savings account and named it Buffer. Not Dream Home or Freedom or anything motivational. Buffer felt plain. Almost boring. That was the point. He set an automatic transfer for $300 every payday. $600 a month. It didn't feel heroic. It felt like a bill. And then he did one more thing that mattered more than the transfer. He stopped checking the balance every day. He'd been treating savings like a scoreboard. Now he treated it like a wall. By the end of month 1, he had added $600. That didn't impress anyone. It didn't even impress him. But his nervous system noticed something. The money left his checking account before he could rationalize spending it. The impulse had less to work with. Still, the old pattern didn't disappear. It just waited. And then something shifts, because the first months aren't about growth. They're about friction. Month 3 didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived with boredom. Harry had added $1,800 to the buffer account. He also had days where he moved money back out, then felt ashamed, then promised he'd do better. The account grew like a slow tide that sometimes slipped backward. That's the part most people miss. Early savings isn't linear. It's emotional. Harry's biggest enemy wasn't math. It was identity. The version of him that believed money was meant to be enjoyed now because later wasn't guaranteed. That voice wasn't reckless. It was protective. It had kept him sane through years of feeling behind. He tried to budget in the traditional sense and failed. Color-coded spreadsheets. Apps that scolded him. Categories that didn't understand that life doesn't come in neat boxes. So he changed the approach. Instead of tracking everything, he tracked one thing, his baseline burn rate. He wrote it on a sticky note, bare life costs, $3,115. That number covered rent, utilities, groceries, minimums, gas, insurance, phone, and loans. No restaurants. No gifts. No trips. Just survival with dignity. Then he wrote another number, monthly take-home, $4,450. The gap was $1,335. That was the arena. Not the whole world. Just the gap. The point isn't guilt. It's the pattern. And the pattern was clear. If the gap got assigned before life touched it, it stayed. If it sat unclaimed, it disappeared. And then the real test showed up, right on schedule. Month 5 was when the story tried to break him. It wasn't dramatic. That's what made it dangerous. His Honda started grinding on turns. A mechanic used calm words that felt like a sentence. Front axle, CV joints. You can't ignore this. The estimate was $1,940. Harry stared at the number like it was personal. He had two choices, both humiliating in different ways. Put it on a credit card and pretend the future version of himself would handle it. Or drain the buffer and admit it wasn't really savings, it was just delayed spending. He sat in the car after the call ended. Hands on the wheel. Quiet. This was the conflict scene, the kind nobody films, a man deciding who he is when no one is watching. He transferred $1,940 from buffer and paid the repair in full. No swipe. No payment plan. The account dropped hard, and yet, something inside him rose. Not pride. Relief. A new feeling he couldn't name at first. Because the repair didn't create a crisis. It solved one. He didn't scramble. He didn't borrow. He didn't ask anyone for help. He handled it. That night he opened his notes app and typed a sentence like a vow. Savings is not money I'm afraid to use. It's money that protects my life. Here's the twist. That expense didn't set him back. It revealed what the buffer was actually for. And once he saw that, he couldn't unsee it. By month 6, Harry had stopped calling it a savings account in his head. He started calling it his stability layer. And that's when he built his framework. Simple, named, and repeatable. He called it the quiet stack. It had 3 stages. Stage 1 was ground. 1 month of bare life expenses. For Harry, that was $3,115. Not a fantasy number. His real baseline. Stage 2 was silence. 3 months of bare life expenses. Enough time to lose a job, get sick, or deal with a family emergency without panic driving every decision. For Harry, silence was $9,345. Stage 3 was distance. The first $50,000. Not because $50,000 is magical in an abstract way, but because it changes what money can absorb without changing who you are. It's the point where multiple problems can happen in a row and you still don't collapse. He didn't announce the quiet stack to anyone. Frameworks like this die when they become performance. He kept it private, almost secretive. A personal operating system. Month 6 ended with buffer back up to $4,100. It wasn't impressive. But it was ground again. He had rebuilt the floor once. That mattered. And then something shifts, because once the floor is real, the mind stops sprinting. It starts planning. Month 9 was when Harry's life began to look the same on the outside, and completely different on the inside. He didn't suddenly stop going out. He didn't become a monk. He just installed small levers that made spending slightly harder and saving slightly easier. He moved his direct deposit so a portion of his paycheck never touched his main checking account. $300 per payday still went to buffer, but now another $150 per payday went to a separate account labeled taxes and boring. This was for annual costs that always surprised him. Car registration, gifts, insurance deductibles, the random subscription renewal he forgot existed. Predictable surprises. He set one rule: if a purchase wasn't planned, it had to survive a 48-hour wait. Not to punish himself. To test whether it was desire or distraction. And he gave himself a small fun budget that was allowed to be spent guilt-free, $120 a week cash-like, in a separate debit account. When it was gone, it was gone. No transfers. No negotiating. He wasn't trying to be disciplined. He was trying to be consistent. The point isn't being strict. It's the pattern. By month 9, buffer hit $7,800 again, even after the car repair. For the first time in years, his savings didn't feel like an accident. It felt like a system. But systems don't get tested when life is smooth. They get tested when life is loud. And Harry was about to learn the difference between having money and having insulation. Year 2 arrived quietly, like most real transformations do. Harry's income had inched up to $84,000 after a job change. His take-home became roughly $4,750 a month. He didn't upgrade his apartment. He didn't change his car. He didn't tell anyone the new number. He just widened the gap. The buffer transfers rose from $600 a month to $900. Not because he felt inspired, but because the system made it automatic. He treated the raise like it never happened. Then his mother called. Her voice was careful, like she was trying not to weigh him down. A medical bill had slipped through. She was short $1,200. Old Harry would have panicked, then paid, then quietly resented it, then used that resentment as permission to blow money somewhere else. New Harry looked at his accounts and felt something colder, steadier. He could help without harming himself. He paid the $1,200 the same day. No drama. No speech. No posting about it. He didn't even tell his friends. This was stealth wealth in its purest form, the ability to be useful without needing applause. Buffer dipped, then recovered. And the recovery was faster now because the gap was wider and the habits were protected. Studies suggest money reduces stress most when it removes uncertainty. Harry didn't need a yacht. He needed fewer what-if spirals at 2 a.m. By the end of year 2, his buffer crossed $15,000. He had entered silence. And here's the twist. The higher the balance climbed, the less he wanted to touch it. Not from fear, but from respect. Year 3 was where the story starts to feel almost unfair. Harry wasn't working harder than everyone else. He wasn't smarter than everyone else. He had simply stopped leaking money into invisible cracks. He refinanced his student loans to a lower rate, reducing payments from $360 to $290. He used Ramit Sethi's idea: spend extravagantly on the things you love, cut mercilessly on the things you don't. For Harry, he loved weekend brunch and live music. He didn't care about new clothes, premium cars, or high-end gadgets. So he stopped pretending he cared. His monthly costs stayed stable while his income climbed slightly again. He began investing consistently too, nothing flashy, just broad index funds, automated, boring. But the buffer remained sacred. Investments were the long game. Buffer was the shield. This is the part most people miss. You can't invest your way out of fragility if one surprise bill forces you to sell at the wrong time. The buffer prevented that. By mid-year 3, his buffer hit $24,000. His friends still thought he was doing fine. That's how it looked. Fine. Normal. Average. But inside, something had changed. He walked through the grocery store without doing mental math on every aisle. He opened emails without bracing for disaster. He wasn't wealthy in the visible sense. He was wealthy in the nervous system sense. The point isn't $24,000. It's the pattern. And then something shifts, because around this point, a person stops chasing stability and starts choosing it. That choice is where the next level begins. Year 4 brought the first real temptation. Harry's co-workers started upgrading. New cars. New apartments. Weekend trips that became identity markers. There was always a subtle question in the air: why aren't you doing this too? He almost did. He toured a nicer apartment, $200-300 a month, with a gym and a view. He could afford it. That was the problem. He could afford it, which meant the decision felt reasonable. He did the math anyway. The difference was $650 a month. $7,800 a year. And the cost wasn't just money. It was momentum. It was time. It was distance. That night he opened his quiet stack note. Ground. Silence. Distance. He was in silence with a strong climb, and he was close enough to taste the next stage. He didn't want to delay that for a nicer kitchen island. So he did the stealth wealth thing. He stayed put. He didn't tell anyone it was strategic. He just said he liked his place. Simple. Unremarkable. Invisible. By the end of year 4, buffer was at $36,000. With his investment accounts growing too, the whole picture was shifting. But the documentary moment isn't the total net worth. It's the hinge in the mind. Harry realized something that felt almost illegal. Stability wasn't about avoiding problems. It was about becoming the kind of person problems couldn't rearrange. And then came the handoff moment, the flip near the climax, the one that separates saving from living differently. Year 5 is where the $50,000 line stopped being a dream and became a calendar event. Harry's income was now $96,000. Take home, about $5,250 a month. His baseline burn rate was still close to $3,200 because he refused to inflate it. The gap had become a machine. He didn't hit $50,000 by doing one heroic thing. He hit it by repeating small boring decisions long enough that they became identity. Then the flip happened. It wasn't a purchase. It was a sentence. At $50,300 in buffer, he realized he could walk away from his job, not forever, but long enough to breathe. He could say no to a toxic manager. He could negotiate. He could wait for a better offer instead of grabbing the first lifeline. This was the handoff. Money stopped being something he chased, and became something that supported his choices. He didn't quit. He didn't announce anything. He simply began operating differently. He took a week off without guilt. He stopped replying instantly to emails that didn't matter. He asked for a raise with calm precision because he wasn't begging. He was choosing. The point isn't $50,000. It's the pattern. The pattern creates the posture. And posture changes outcomes. Here's the twist. The moment he crossed that threshold, the world didn't clap. Nothing external changed. But internally, the noise dropped. And in that quiet, he could finally see what stealth wealth really protects. After the threshold, Harry's biggest danger wasn't losing money. It was revealing it. Not in the obvious way, no flashy purchases, but in subtle lifestyle creep that could quietly reintroduce fragility. He started practicing what he called lifestyle lag. Every time his income rose, he waited 6 months before upgrading anything. Most cravings die in 6 months. If the desire survived, he considered it carefully. Usually it didn't. He also protected his habits the way a security system protects a house. He kept his automatic transfers. He kept his fun budget. He kept his 48-hour rule. He kept his baseline burn rate visible. Because the truth was simple, the same behaviors that got him to $50,000 could also erase it if he stopped respecting them. He didn't become stingy. He became intentional. He spent on health, better groceries, a gym membership, therapy sessions every other week. Quiet investments in the mind and body. Things that kept the machine running. And he stayed invisible. Not because he was ashamed, but because he had learned a strange social law. The moment people believe you have money, they start writing stories about what you should do with it. Those stories can sabotage the system. So Harry kept the story boring. Same apartment. Same car. Same calm. The wealth stayed off stage. And then something shifts, because the final lesson isn't about reaching the threshold. It's about what to do after it, when nobody is watching and the temptation to drift is strongest. The takeaway is not that $50,000 makes someone rich. The takeaway is that it makes someone harder to destabilize. It's the point where emergencies stop feeling like identity threats and start feeling like logistics. Harry didn't win by earning a massive salary. He won by building a system that turned income into insulation, consistently, over time. He made the boring choice so many times it became the powerful choice. Here's what can be done tonight. Open a separate savings account and name it something plain: buffer. Not a dream. A function. Set an automatic transfer that happens the same day money arrives, even if it's $25. Calculate a bare life monthly number, the cost of keeping the lights on and the wheels turning. Write it down. Make it visible. Then build toward 1 month, then 3. Quiet stack logic: ground, silence, distance. Next, create a small guilt-free spending lane so the system doesn't collapse under perfection. And add one friction rule, like a 48-hour wait on unplanned purchases. Not to punish desire. To screen for distraction. The point isn't motivation. It's the pattern. If the pattern holds, the balance grows. And when it grows far enough, stability stops being a hope and becomes a posture, a calm refusal to be rushed by life. This is educational content, not financial advice. Every situation is different, and numbers should be adapted to personal income, debt, and risk. If this story felt familiar, stay close. Quiet systems change loud lives, but only for the people who keep going when it's boring.